The following podcast contains spoilers and words like piss, shit, and f***. We watch thing. We watch thing. Hello everybody and welcome to We Watched a Thing. As always, you've got Billy, and this week I'm honoured to have with me great friend of the show and all-round champion and great bloke. It's Sean Carney from Scaredy Boys and How Good's Footy. How you doing, mate?
I'm great, mate. Thank you for having me back.
Anytime.
Did I pick this film or did you pick this film? I cannot remember.
I can't remember either. I remember sending you a list, and from memory, I think you were like, oh, yes, man, I'm very excited for that one, which I was as well. So,
Yeah.
Well,
I think because we looked at it and we were like, we're going to watch it for Scaredy Boys, for the horror show. So, we've all made choices.
Well, I famously chose a very unscary film to chat about on your shows. So,
hey, it was Amityville Horror would have been scary in the 70s.
Yeah,
definitely.
There's
true. Lots of movies like that for sure.
But before we get into it, can I just ask you about your book? Can you just give that a bit of a plug? Because it was fucking awesome, just quietly. I loved that book.
Thank you so much. I think you were the first person who bought it when I put it up on Amazon. And Amazon delivery, very quick.
Insanely quick. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked when it came the next day.
Yeah. So it's a novella. It's called The Pyramid, and it is a horror story. It's about a father who's venturing up into there's a science research base up in the Himalayas, and he's got to go there and find his daughter because they've lost contact through a storm or something like that. And he's got to go and tell her that her mother has died, and he's going to try and bring her home for the funeral. And when he gets to the research base, he finds that things are pretty fucked up there. That leads us down a pretty dark path. But yeah, it's a quick, short one. I think you could probably read it in an hour and a half or 2 hours or something like that. It's just a punchy little fucked up horror novella available on Amazon.
Yeah. It's awesome. I'd highly recommend it. Definitely, especially if you like horror at all, and even just if you like kind of thrillers or actions, it's just a great read.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I actually wrote it a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, I was just thinking about it lately. I'm sort of trying to get a few writing things happening, and I had that sort of sitting there, and I was never happy with the ending, so I rewrote a bit of the ending and reached out to an artist that I know, and she did an awesome job on the cover, and that just sort of got things rolling. And
nice.
It's good fun.
Yeah, great. Are you writing anything at the moment?
I've got a couple. I'm hoping to have something out sort of later in the year, but I've got a few things on the go, and I'll sort of need to target one and ride that home. But it'll be in the horror sort of genre for sure.
Yeah, nice.
Because I'm cursed to live in that now, I think.
Well, speaking of the horror genre, let's get into this. Men is a 2022 folk horror film written and directed by Alex Garland. It stars Jessie Buckley and Rory Kinnear and not many other people, to be honest. And I'm going to do this to you, Carney. What is it about?
Yeah, so this one's about Harper, who has gone through this horrible tragedy in her life where her estranged husband has died rather horrifically.
Yeah.
And she has booked like an Airbnb style, like a nice cottage house out in the quiet English countryside. It's always been this dream of hers to sort of go out there and just relax and take it all in. And when she gets there, she finds that not everything is as it seems in the town, and things sort of start to get quite weird.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty succinct. So we haven't spoken about this at all yet. We were both very excited prior to seeing this. I loved both of Alex Garland's previous films, so I was really keen for this. Reviews have been divisive, much more than I thought they would be.
Very much so.
Where are you on this? Where are you on the spectrum?
The low end.
The low end. Wow. Okay.
Not as low as when I saw it.
Yeah.
If I'd reviewed it, I still haven't reviewed it on Letterboxd. If I'd reviewed it immediately after walking out of the cinema, I think I might have given it 1 star.
Wow.
But I've thought about it a lot more since then, and the people I saw it with had a similar sort of shocked reaction to it, but they took a more measured approach. I'm kind of all or nothing with movies sometimes, where I'm like, nah, fuck that. But it's certainly, look, there are things I really like about it. So I take it you're sort of in the positive side of things?
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting conversation because I also haven't reviewed this movie, because if I did immediately after I saw it, it would have been a 9. like a
Wow.
4.5 on Letterboxd.
All right.
And I didn't do it then because I knew that wasn't right. And so I'm the opposite of you. You kind of really disliked it and like it more the more you think about it. I'm a little bit the opposite end. The more I think about it, the more I understand people's issues with it. But what I liked about this movie, I didn't just like, I loved. Like, there is some really, really great stuff in this movie. And there's some stuff that doesn't work as well. So, man, I'm curious to talk about this with you then.
There are some movies that you can come out of the cinema, or like the credits start rolling and you go, oh, I can jump on Letterboxd straight away.
Yeah,
like
for
Top
sure.
Gun Maverick, 5 stars, baby, every day of the week. But yeah, a film like Men, and I think it's probably an Alex Garland type experience movie.
Yeah.
I think it's good to think about it for a few days.
Yeah.
Because if I'd immediately hit go on that review, it would have been pretty scathing. But now I'm kind of like, nah, I've taken a step back and I've gone, fucking hell, I love the atmosphere of the movie.
Yeah.
I love the cinematography. I love the acting. I actually really quite like the direction of it up until I don't. Which might be the same sort of timestamp for a lot of people.
Yep.
And like the sound design, the music score, there's so many like great things that we can talk about with the film. There's a great horror writer. He wrote the film, Sinister, and he wrote Doctor Strange, and he's an author as well. C. Robert Cargill. And I remember him tweeting about it. He must have seen it just before it came out, and he was kind of like, he didn't say whether he liked it or hated it. He was just like, it's an experience.
Yeah.
Make sure you set time to like have a beer or coffee afterwards with friends to discuss what you have just witnessed.
Yeah.
It's that kind of film.
Did you ever see Mother, the Darren Aronofsky film?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you hate that as well?
I don't think it's a film I don't really think about a lot because I watched it once and I'm kind of like, that'll do. I didn't hate it as much because I remember the discourse was really strong about it.
It seems very similar to this in the terms of how polarizing it is.
These have a lot of similarities, I think.
Yeah.
Mother is kind of one of those films where once you click in with understanding what he's doing, you go, okay, this is kind of just like an empty bit of a weird shit film. And maybe this one's the same for me. I don't know. Yeah,
I think that part of the problem is that it's funny for how wonderful the atmosphere and everything in this film is. It's not a subtle film at all.
No.
like it's very similar to me in that, the message is almost too clear and it almost dilutes it somewhat because it is so on the nose almost.
It's incredibly on the nose by the final moment, by the final sequence. The third act really is where it's like, oh, okay, there isn't any subtlety left at all. You've just sort of laid it all out on the line. And I think that's probably where the film suffers for it because for the first half, it's pretty engaging. I'll tell you my experience of watching it. I am a scaredy boy, and I watched the trailer for it, which just had like, that great sound that like that. And I was like, fuck this. Like, hearing like, this must have been what it felt like to hear that. What was it? Friday the 13th, is it? Is that the one that's got the, must have been like that again. I just had chills hearing that. Like, and I was dreading that tunnel scene when that came. But I carried popcorn into the movie. And there's a reason why the term popcorn movie exists, I think. It's because you want to watch like Transformers and you can't hear your loud chewing because there's explosions and robots punching each other. A movie like this, I was actually too tense because I was so expecting massive spooks. I didn't touch the popcorn until there was probably 25 minutes left of the movie.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like, I didn't want to eat. My mouth was too tense. I couldn't move it. I was just sitting in the chair, and I saw it with Sanspants radio guy Joel Dusha and a couple of the other guys as well. Yeah. But he was sitting next to me, and he just kept giving me little side eyes every time something really fucked was happening, and I was like, God damn you.
Yeah.
I just couldn't stand it.
I saw Dusha's review, actually. From memory, he gave it a really positive score, but his written review basically boiled down to, man, Alex Garland's an idiot.
Oh, yeah. I think from watching it with him, he was like, what the fuck? Yeah. Also, can't wait to buy it on Blu-ray and watch it again. Like it's a Joel Dusha kind of movie. Just like fucked vibes, absolutely off the chain third act. Yeah. Whereas most people would watch the ending of this and be like, I don't think I need to watch this again, or at least give it 10 years and then maybe revisit it. He's just like, when can I come back? Yeah.
So let me ask you this. You said that you were tense the whole way through waiting for a spook. Were you scared in this movie? Did you actually find it scary?
I always get to the end of a movie and that sort of like colors my opinion of the spook. So like in hindsight, I'm like, no, it wasn't sort of worth being scared of. But I definitely was. I was too scared to eat popcorn. So I was, and the tunnel scene in particular was really scary. Just when she sort of approaches it, the camera sort of comes in and then just nothing but blackness.
Yeah, she covers the edge of the tunnel. Yeah.
Because then it's just, I hate, like that's the best thing with horror, I suppose, that suggestion of something in there.
Yeah.
And then maybe when you do finally see the thing, it's not as spooky anymore. And the movie just gets to a point where it's so flat out weird and crazy that I was just kind of like, wow. But yeah, the popcorn thing, that really killed me because I started eating it 25 minutes to go and then disgusting shit was happening probably 10, 15 minutes to go or whatever. So I've really had a real narrow popcorn window.
Well, I made the mistake of seeing this movie with my wife who does not like horror movies and especially doesn't like kind of violence against women, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so it just, because she had seen the trailer, I hadn't. I knew nothing about the film other than it was Alex Garland, and I knew it was meant to be kind of a horror, but I figured that it might be similar to, say, Annihilation, where it's not really all that scary. It's more a horror in kind of theme.
Unsettling rather than in your face jump scares.
Yeah. But she was terrified during this movie.
So did you go into it not knowing that Rory Kinnear was going to be playing multiple people?
Can I tell you a secret? And this is going to reveal to everybody just what a fucking idiot I am.
When did you realize?
An hour after the movie when I was reading
the Wikipedia
page.
Oh, man.
Which is literally kind of like the point.
That is interesting because I've been reading some reviews today and there were a lot of people who were kind of like, I was so baffled. It was like, when I saw The Priest, I was like, did they get an actor who looked really similar to him? Like some people didn't grasp it. Yeah.
Yeah. See,
which is funny. I thought you would have for sure when the little kid took the teenager schoolboy took the mask off.
I noticed that something was wrong. So visually, that is the worst effect in that movie, that face replace, because that's a different body.
Like, is that deliberately terrible? Because it's like, I haven't seen something that bad since, when they did Captain America?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like they just take a smaller body but don't change the proportions of the person's face.
Exactly. Yeah. There's few cases that works in. Like, it worked really well in Social Network with the Winklevoss twins. That's the best case I've seen of it. Or even Furious 7 with Paul Walker's digital. I thought most of that was pretty great. So I didn't even think that that's what was happening here. I thought that they had just done something weird as like another trying to unsettle you, like, so you're in that almost uncanny valley. This kid doesn't look right. What's going on? So I didn't realize that they were all Rory Kinnear until it was funny. When we walked out of the movie, my wife was like, why did Jeffrey give birth to himself twice? And I was like, he didn't. The priest gave birth to him, but she had noticed that they were the same actor and it confused her.
Yeah.
I had total face blindness. I thought they were all different dudes.
That's great. Hey, that's a tribute to Rory Kinnear for really sinking into characters.
Yeah.
To be honest, because that's one of the only things I knew about it going in is that I did watch the trailer, but the trailer didn't really give much away.
Yeah.
It was more of a vibe sort of thing with the sound design. I knew that he was going to be playing basically all the men.
Yeah.
I thought they would have gone to further extent with prosthetics and stuff like that. They didn't really, to me, maybe to you, but to me, they didn't make much of an effort to sort of change his appearance too much.
Yeah, that's fair.
That kid is so weird.
Yeah.
Like, I actually couldn't believe when I saw that. I was like, I wonder if they did it deliberately shit just to add a fucked vibe to the thing, like to make you feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely my vibe. Like, when he took that mask off, and I was like, something is not right with that dude's face. Yeah. Like, I thought that was done purposefully to kind of unsettle the viewer, but maybe it was just a really bad job.
I think it might have been.
Yeah.
I also found, and one of my mates I saw this with agreed with me, we thought, the friend who Harper keeps calling on the phone?
Yeah.
We thought the longer the film went on, the more her face started to resemble Rory Kinnear.
Yeah,
and we thought that was going to be like a weird thing as well, but I think we were way off the mark because that's,
Yeah. Well, I think, her character is one thing. I think, like I say, a lot of the movie isn't subtle. And there is a lot going on that is kind of obvious symbolism. I didn't understand at the end when that character shows up and it's revealed that she's pregnant. And I'm like, well, that has to mean something, right? Because we've purposefully not been shown that to this point. Like, we've only ever seen her face
That's like
up.
a reveal.
Yeah, it's very distracting to the
what?
audience now, but I didn't get that. So you didn't understand what that was kind of meant to give us either?
No, the only thing I can think is like, is it just like supposed to signify to Harper that things go on? Like life
maybe
keeps going, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Such a weird ending.
It is a weird ending. The ending is what, when I walked out of the cinema, because like I said, for most of this movie, I loved what was happening. The last act lost me a little bit, but at the same time, I admired so much what it was doing that it actually didn't bother me. The thing that really got me was I guess you'd call it a post-credit scene when her friend shows up. That was the bit that for me was like, oh, okay, now I'm not so sure about this.
Yeah, that was interesting because there is a lens you could look at this film through and be like, well, maybe none of it even happened.
Exactly, yeah.
And then the friend shows up, but it obviously had to have happened because we see through her point of view blood on the ground, blood in the house,
the car is
blood on
crashed.
Harper, the car's smashed. So it's like, okay, so everything is very it's the movie is both literal and too vague.
Yeah,
sort of all mixed together,
and that's my problem. I kind of like I love a movie that's kind of bizarre and surreal. Like, I don't know if you've seen Denis Villeneuve's Enemy, which is
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So
the Jake Gyllenhaal one, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes.
So similar, where for most of the film you're not sure what's really happening and what's not, but it doesn't end ambiguously, at least I don't think. The movie ends, and by the end you're kind of clear on what was actually happening. Whereas this ends and it just makes me more confused because, same as you, I just assumed that a lot of, not like in Harper's head isn't the right term, I don't think. Like, it's obviously real, whether it's supernatural or not, but I didn't think that this was an actual being or entity that we were seeing. And then at the end, it kind of looks like it must have been.
Well, because you also have, she never really addresses the fact that all these guys look the same. So then it has to be a deliberate thing. Obviously, it's deliberate by Alex Garland, but it has to be a deliberate story device for the whole, like, all men are the same sort of statement, I suppose. But she has that interaction, you know, when the priest comes into her house. Yeah. And she very specifically says to him, like, what are you? Yeah. As opposed to, that's such a weird thing to say to a person, don't you think? Yeah. You would say, who the fuck are you? Not what the fuck are you? Yeah. Her saying, what are you, implies that she's aware that there is something fucking really, like, bizarre going on here. Yeah. So I don't know, like, it kind of puts its foot down that path a little bit, and I go, okay, are we going to, like, explore this now? No, we're not. It's just, I just don't get it. Like, so when her friend shows up at the end and there's blood everywhere, if that movie had kept going and police showed up, and
she's arrested.
Would they show up to be like, oh, okay, there's one dead guy there and then another completely different looking dead guy there? Yeah. Are all these townspeople actually different men? Yeah. Or is it a being that a monster? Yeah. Like, because it's a little unclear.
Yeah, because that's the bizarre thing about it. It definitely ends on a supernatural note, whereas for the rest of the film, even though weird stuff is happening, supernatural isn't kind of the vibe I was getting from it.
No.
The weird thing about it is that there are other women in the town. Like, when the police come the first time, one of them is a female, the one who investigates her. She doesn't seem to think it's weird that all these men look the same. So it's like, do they actually look the same? Is this literally just a thematic device by Alex Garland saying all men are the same? Or is it that Harper sees all men the same? But if it is that, like you say, she doesn't kind of reference that. She doesn't seem freaked out by the fact that these are all the same guy.
Yeah, like, I'd forgotten the fact that the female police woman was like female police woman. Just so rattled. I expected just men in this movie. Yeah, but the fact that she doesn't comment on the fact that her partner, who she's working with, looks exactly like the naked man that they've arrested. Like,
exactly.
So it's an obvious thing that it shouldn't be, but then you have that weird moment where she's like, what are you? And it's like, well, what is going on here? And I love before he said she'd be arrested. I think there's a term for it in cinema, and it's the dead werewolf excuse or something like that. Yep. It's kind of like someone turned into a werewolf, killed a bunch of people, and then turned back into a human, and it's like, they can just walk free. It's like, no, there are ramifications for what you've done. You've killed a lot of men tonight. Like,
yeah.
What is happening here? It's such a strange movie.
Yeah.
It doesn't. So for me, I think it tries. Alex Garland's trying to take it down a path. I think he's gone intellectual at the expense of the scares.
Yeah.
And I think it's a bit of a trend in these probably, we'll generalize and say these A24 horror films.
Yep.
I think we're getting like the sort of the metaphor monster instead of, the actual monster.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. And I think that's why I kind of disliked that final act more so for me. Firstly, the supernaturalness of it. But also up to that point, one thing I really admired and loved about this film was that it was you still haven't seen Midsommar, have you? You're still too spooked.
No.
Right. Okay.
Although I suspect it'll have a similar vibe to this movie.
Yeah. Well, one thing I love about that movie is that there's almost not a scene set at night. It's like the horror of daylight. And that to me is what was so great about this film for those first couple of acts, is that we're in this beautiful sunlit bathed countryside and she's walking amongst all these beautiful green trees, and yet we're unsettled. And it was like, this is reality for women, is that literally going for a walk by yourself during the daytime is scary. And just, like that's what was great about the villain for the first couple of acts for me. Like when she's in the tunnel, that guy doesn't actually do anything inherently scary, really. He stands up and he starts walking, and she just starts running.
I think there's a scream or a sound.
There is kind of a weird guttural scream at one point, but from memory, that's after she leaves the tunnel. But
yeah, okay.
So it's like, that's the thing about men, is that to a woman, we are scary. We don't have to impose any real threat because we are threatening. And I loved that seemed to be what the movie was doing for those first couple of acts. And then when we get to the finale, when it becomes supernatural and, actual attacks going, I'm like, wow, what is going on?
And that finale set at night as well, notably.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
I've been watching a lot of horror, and it is interesting. You will commonly see the scary things happen at night, and then the daytime is when you have that reset, that time to breathe.
Yeah.
So yeah, I actually do respect that. Probably the scariest scene is the tunnel one. And while the tunnel is dark, that is like pure daylight. We've just, like you said, seen these nice green woods in the forest. And
yeah.
He does a good job, Garland, with some of that stuff, but it just loses his way in the third act.
Yeah. I mean, okay, well, let's talk about the third act then.
Yeah.
At what point was it for you? Was it the birthings? Was it the
I'd say it was when I saw a back pussy.
It's very bizarre that we've seen the naked man multiple times, plenty of hanging trunk in this film, lots of peen, and then randomly out of nowhere, he's got a vagine and he's pushing a kid out of it.
Peen on screen. Actually, you love to see it. I watched The Northman. I wanted that peen. Wanted it. They took it away. No, but that it was before the back vagina and all the other vaginas. I think I just kind of lost me. I think the grotesque knife hand thing in the door, that was crazy.
Yeah.
And then sort of beyond that, after that happened, everything just went a bit nuts. And then it ultimately went incredibly nuts. And then we landed where we landed with the fucking birthing.
Yeah. And I think it all felt very obvious to me too. At what point did you realize that the sliced hand and the broken ankle and stuff was, her husband, like they were mirroring his injuries after his jump?
Oh, not until he appeared. And then I was like,
right.
Absolutely fucking nailed that.
Yeah.
Like that is actually, fantastic.
Yeah.
To be honest, I'm surprised that Rory Kinnear is in the film and they just didn't have the husband play everything. Although I guess that's sort of the twist. It becomes a different film if you have him.
Yeah.
But yeah. And there's lots of things I do respect about the movie. I respect Garland sort of trying to tell a story about grief as well.
Yeah.
I think he tries to do too many things though. You've got grief, you've got trauma, you've got the whole metaphor stuff with the Green Man, the sort of the naked man.
Yeah.
I was looking into the Green Man today, who's like this folklore figure all about rebirth and harvest and all this sort of thing. So the idea that perhaps Harper comes into his sort of world and has all these things that are in opposition to him and what he stands for, I suppose she's carrying this guilt and the grief and that idea of, he said he was going to kill himself because of me. Is it my fault, or was he just trying to climb down the thing at the end and he fell horribly? Just on that, I found it interesting that when she gets to confront him at the end, that she didn't ask him that. That seemed to be a major factor in her grief. That kind of was it my fault? But I suppose you get to the end of the film and she really doesn't seem to give a fuck anymore.
No,
she's kind of like, fuck you. What do you want? And he's like, I just want your love. And it's such a pathetic comment from him.
It is,
just
isn't
like,
it?
I kind of wish that they didn't do the coward edit. I just want to see the dick get cut off and shoved in his mouth. If I've had to sit through all that birthing, like, give me that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I do. Yeah, I agree. I love those final moments when he appears and she literally just doesn't care and she asks him that, and it's such a douchey, gaslighty response. It's just note perfect, I reckon.
What's your feeling on this? This for me is a weird movie to be written and directed by a man. I would have really loved to see this core concept made by a woman. Yep. Because he's it was interesting. I read today that he wrote the first draft of this 15 years ago, and he sort of just had it sitting there until he sort of had, I guess, the influence to be able to make a film like this happen. Yeah. And it is weird that he would have written something like this 15 years ago because the climate is so different now. Yeah, yeah. In light of the Me Too movement and all those sorts of things that have happened. And for him to present this, one of the funniest reviews I saw on Letterboxd was just like someone being like, "Hey, Alex, I hope she sees this, man." Do you know what I mean? It's kind of just like a feature-length, millions of dollars spent on this man being like, "Oh, but, I understand. I'm your ally," sort of thing. Yeah. And it's kind of like, It's also at odds with your film. Your film is very literally, all men are the same and all men are shit. But I feel like he's positioned himself as like, except for me.
I know, it's a bizarre, it's almost like a hashtag not all men film, while at the same time saying all men are garbage.
Yeah, it's parts of it just feel grubby. Like, there's a film, you did an episode on it, so you've seen it. It's The Last Duel. It came out last year. That's the year before, the Ridley Scott film. Yeah. It's not a perfect film. I enjoy parts of it, but what I respect about it is that the screenplay is written by 3 people and it's broken into 3 sections. And there's a woman, I can't remember her name. She wrote the section that Jodie Comer's character, it's her point of view. Yeah. And that's so crucial, I think, because you need to have a woman's voice. Like, I'm obviously a man, but if I was I'd be fascinated to know, like, a woman coming out of this movie and being like, what the fuck? Yeah. Like,
I find it a really interesting question. Like, so you're a writer and you're, a trained screenwriter and stuff. Where do you stand on that old concept of write what you know? I find it such an interesting thing to be said because in some ways I understand it. And I'm like, obviously there has to be, in writing, there has to be truth to what you're saying. Otherwise a reader can feel that and it just feels false. Yeah. But at the same time, if you stick so strictly to that, are you only ever allowed to write about a podcaster? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I feel Stephen King, for example, has written so many great female characters. Like, I just find it a really interesting concept. And I guess this is a different kettle of fish because this is thematically something else. This isn't just him writing from a woman's point of view. This is him writing from a woman's point of view about men. But it's an interesting one.
When I was in film school, that was a very big thing that they pushed. They were kind of like, write what you know, write what you know, write what you know. I don't really like that. Yeah, same. I like the approach of write what interests you because sometimes it's great to write to learn something. Yeah. The research part of it is so interesting to me. Yeah. You tackle something that you're really passionate about and then you learn more and more about it. Writing what you know, it's kind of like, well, I need to live my entire life then to get all these different experiences. Yeah. I was in film school And like, I think Dexter, the show, was pretty big at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I'll write a little short film about a serial killer or something like that. And then I got a lot of like just weird attitudes in class because the whole thing was write what you know. And I'm writing this serial killer thing and I had to just scrap it and come up with something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't really like the write what you know.
No.
I don't know if Garland would approach his stuff with a write what you know, just because some of his stuff is so wild.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
He's definitely has a keen interest in approaching gender, though, based on the 3 films of his that I've seen. He's only directed 3, I think.
He has,
correct?
yeah.
Yeah. He's written others. Like, I really love Sunshine. He wrote that for Danny Boyle.
Yep. He wrote
28 Days Later.
Yeah. What was the
and Dread as well. He wrote Dread.
Yeah.
Which is I really love Dread. I thought it's fantastic.
Yeah. It's a good movie.
So so when this was coming out, I was excited because I'm like, I really like Garland. Like Annihilation, book and film. They have differences, but they're both.
I didn't realize there was a book.
Yeah. So it's written by Jeff Vandermeer.
Right.
I think it's a trilogy. I've only read the first one.
Yeah.
A lot of it's pretty similar, but that's another one where you look at it and you go, it's interesting that Garland would make that too, because that is a film where, I mean, Oscar Isaac's in it, but it's a female point.
Very female led, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting for him. But I just wish I really like the fact that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck collaborated with a female writer and really gave her agency to take that third act of that film where it needed to go. Yeah. It added a lot to it, I think.
Oh, definitely. That third act for me almost makes that film. Like it's
I agree. I think I was watching that movie, not to get too sidetracked in the last Jewel chat, but I watched it and I didn't really love it. And then when I saw her point of view and it really clicked in the cleverness of some of the stuff that was on display. Ridley Scott, he's a fascinating director. This guy's in his like deep in his 80s, I think. Yeah. He's pumping out movies and they're still at a high quality.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I think the thing about this film for me is, and you kind of said it before, it almost thinks it is or wants to be almost smarter than it is. There's too much going on, and particularly by the point it gets to the end. And the thing about it is, this is a short movie. There's a lot of movie for this movie. Like it's 90 minutes long or just over. It's like an hour 40, and there is so much in here for that runtime.
They pack a lot in. It's such a bizarre movie because they pack so many ideas in, and yet it's so, by the end, it's so transparent a movie.
Yeah.
And I think that when a horror movie does that, it creates sort of this divide, I think, with an audience.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what I felt. I got to a point with it where I was just kind of like, well, fuck, man. You're just like shoveling, like I love subtext, and I don't really think this movie has much of it when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
Like you need to, I love a horror movie that, I love metaphor.
Yeah.
But it should be background, I think.
Yeah.
Whereas the metaphor is all foreground by the end of this film.
Yeah.
And it's sort of baffled. Baffled is how I would describe this movie. There's this, actually, I came across this great Stephen King quote today in this article about men specifically. And it said that his quote sort of at the end of this, but the great horror films, the truly terrifying ones, tend to operate on a more irrational level. They have a touch of madness to them, speaking to the primal fears rattling around our heads. They can't be easily solved or explained. It's what Stephen King meant when he wrote about the poetry of fear and how nightmares exist outside of logic.
Yeah.
And I think Alex Garland lost balance with that.
Yeah.
I think he put the metaphor at the forefront and sort of stripped everything else away from it. Like an ambiguous horror movie is good, but you get to a point with Men where you're like, oh, it's painfully obvious what he is saying.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And you love to kind of come away from a movie and be like, oh, my interpretation could be completely different. I can take this in many different ways, but I don't really see many different paths that he's created with this film.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think the other thing is, it's like, to be honest, it's a quite simple statement that the film is making. Like, I don't think that there's so much going on here that you need to have that metaphor at the forefront. Like we're getting spoon-fed it in multiple ways. Like, we're already getting Rory Kinnear playing every single man, but then we end with a sequence where it's just man creating man over and over again. It's like, okay, I get it. I get it. But
honestly, I was like so rattled by the whole thing that I was just like, at any time, it's like, is Harper going to be birthed out of this thing at any minute? And then the husband came out. I think the husband came out like foot first, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, out of his mouth. Yeah.
Oh, man. Today I was thinking about the practicalities of how they shot that. I'd actually kind of like to know, but also don't want to know.
All right. So all in all, how are you scoring Men out of 10?
Oh, man. I'm going to go with a 5.
Yeah.
So, so a 2.5 out of 5 for me. It'll be on Letterboxd. And, God, I hope I don't think about it too much more. It's like maybe it deserves a 3. I don't know. The first half of it, really great.
Yeah.
Like, he's done an exceptional job at creating tension and atmosphere and fear. And then he's really let the air out of the balloon for me in the back half of it. I'm curious to know, though, has your score gone down?
It's definitely gone down from like I said, when I first walked out of this movie, I was like, wow, I think that's a 9. Just because, like I said, I loved so much what it was doing. Like, I think the cinematography in this film is gorgeous. This is a great looking film. And so much of it works for what the film is doing because, like I said, I think there's that juxtaposition of the beauty and the natural sunlight and everything against this horrific stuff that is happening. But I agree with you, towards the end, it kind of loses that atmosphere. And even though at the time I liked it, because like I said, I figured out that it was going to be the husband at the end a little bit earlier. Like once the hand got split and I remembered that his hand on the fence, I was like, okay, this is where we're heading. I didn't see the birthing coming.
Yeah.
But
I love that you figured out that little key piece, but you didn't figure out Rory Kinnear. Yeah.
So I'm gonna end on a 7. I think I have to be honest. This is a film that I would rewatch. Like, and I would be very curious to know after rewatching it how I feel about it then. But I think there's enough that really worked for me here that I'm gonna stick on a 7.
Yeah, my attitude to films has changed so much over the years because I think in the past, if I hated something and someone was like, "Nah, I loved it," I would have been like, "Get the fuck out of here!" But now it's like, "Nah, that's cool," because like my favorite movie of all time is Loch Ness, and that would have a shockingly low score on like IMDb. It's a film no one's even heard of.
Yeah, it's funny. I tried to show my kids that the other day.
Oh no,
because my daughter's super curious about the Loch Ness monster. She's like, "Is this thing real?" I'm like, there's a movie about that. It's mostly about Ted Danson though.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. John Dempsey is trying to rediscover himself out there in Scotland. It's fantastic. A great perperformance.
Yeah.
Wait, did you say you tried to make them watch it?
Yeah, they got like 20 minutes in and
just checked out.
Yeah.
They're like,
kids
where's
these
Nessie?
days. Yeah.
Oh, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? Everyone can have a different opinion. That's why it's great.
Yeah. Well, that's why I love movie podcasting. Like, it's fun. This has to be the first time in quite a while that, the two of us haven't had like the same opinion, me and a guest on the show. So I love when this happens.
That's a good thing, I reckon.
Yeah.
It had to be men. Men had to had to do it. Both the film and men in general, just absolute bastards.
Well, mate, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate this. Can you tell everybody about Scaredy Boys and How Good's Footy and just where to find you?
Sure, yeah. Scaredy Boys is a podcast I do with two of my buddies, Damo and Tom. And we're 3 cowards who can't stand horror movies. We love the horror genre, but we're absolute cowards. It terrifies us. So we force ourselves to watch horror movies and then ask 3 questions. Were we scared? Did the characters act wisely? And how would we behave in that situation? And it's a lot of fun. It's wherever you find podcasts, really. And How Good's Footy, if you're an Australian Aussie Rules football fan who likes 3 hosts yelling at each other and being passionate about football, that you can find that as well.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, man. I really I love coming on. I love just cinema. It's just great.
I know.
That's the thing. I think about the silver screen, and I came out of this, and that birthing scene, it felt like cinema corrupted for me. But for someone like Joel Dusha from Plumbing the Death Star, he was like, "This is what I'm all about. Give me more of this."
Well, maybe next time we'll finally get to Merlin.
Oh, yes. An absolute classic. Up there with Loch Ness in the Carney household rentals from Blockbuster.
Yeah. Well, I'd recommend both those shows. And Damien's going to be hopping on here next month. We're going to chat about Nope. Which it was funny, actually. When we walked in to see this film, we were like a couple of minutes late, and it was halfway through the trailer for Nope. I closed my eyes, blocked my ears, started doing la la la. My wife is like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, I can't see this trailer. I've managed to avoid it so far, but I've heard a lot of people say that the trailer gives away too much already, even without having seen it.
Really? Okay. I think I have heard there are 2 trailers.
Right.
I've only seen the first one, which kind of just doesn't give too much. But I have heard the second one maybe. Yeah. Just avoid it and just go for the ride. Yeah. Jordan Peele he works metaphor into his horror movies, but he does it in the way I love, which is in the background. He creates character and you go on the journey with him, and I think he does it the right way.
Yeah. What did you think of Us, which was a bit more divisive? Like, everybody loved Get Out, but Us was cool, same.
Scared the shit out of me.
Yep.
Up until sort of a point, sort of halfway through, when fun is maybe not the right word, but I started to like it. Became more entertaining than it was scary. Yeah. And so I had a really great time with it. Yeah. Which, Lupita, she crushed it. She should have won an Oscar for that film. Yeah. Honestly, that voice. Yeah. I just got goosebumps thinking about it. Yeah. I loved Us, but I probably won't rewatch it.
Yeah. Jordan Peele's great. I think there's something about, the relation between timing in both comedy and horror. So I love when someone who's like traditionally a comedian hops into horror. I think Krasinski did the same thing with A Quiet Place. I just think that the timing in that is so fucking good.
And you also bring, comedy has humanity to it. And I think sometimes with horror, we focus too much on the monster and not enough on actually, you've got to care about the characters. And definitely. I think Krasinski and Jordan Peele, they both just understand that completely. Yeah. And it terrifies me. Yeah. It terrifies me, but it's great to see.
Well, this is honestly, I could just sit here and talk movies all night with you. But anyway, thank you again so much for joining me. Next week, I'll be chatting about Independence Day with Liz from Movie Reviews in 20 Qs, who it's one of her favorite films. So where are you on Independence Day?
I rewatched it during COVID, I think. Yeah. And it didn't really hold up as well as I would have thought. Yeah. I reckon.
Yeah. See,
I can't remember what I rated it. I think I just remember watching it and being like, oh, yeah, not quite as good as I thought, because it felt like a big, big movie.
Yeah. See, I'm one of those weird people who had never seen it before.
Oh, wow.
So I watched it, and for me, it definitely doesn't hold up. I had the same reaction with Die Hard, though, which people still get the shits at me about, but I don't think Die Hard's as good as people think it is. I think there's a lot of nostalgia there.
Die Hard's it's a classic. I haven't watched Die Hard for many years. I used to watch it on, it used to be like my Christmas movie that I would watch. Yeah. And
see, for me, that's Reindeer Games.
Great. And then I tried to get my girlfriend to watch it. I think she fell asleep during it. And then it just hasn't got another run in this household ever since. I'm due for a rewatch.
Well, thanks again. In the meantime, if you want to get in touch with me, you can do that at wewatchedathing.com or wewatchedathing@gmail.com. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all under the handle at wewatchedathing. If you want to help support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/wewatchedathing, and I'll catch you next week.